demonstrate the utter brutality of Mr. Putin's illegal war on the Ukrainian people. At least 11 people have been killed and dozens injured in the attacks across the country. Ukrainian MP Oleksiy Gonkachenko says more equipment is needed to defend Ukraine.
There are strange limitations in the supplies. We received HIMARSes, which is a multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS from the UK, Mars from Germany, but only with short-range missiles. We're receiving drones, but not fighters. We're receiving armored vehicles, but not tanks. For the moment, we have not received any one Western tank. I can't understand why.
And finally, a survey has found dog owners and their pets often share personality traits. That's according to a dog behaviourist after Britain's Kennel Club polled 1,500 current and former dog owners. It found the dog's traits and the owner's personalities lined up often. For example, Whippet owners very often love an adventure. And that's your news for now.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Flying you to over 200 destinations is our business. What you do there is yours.
Dry with clear spells, a chilly and mainly calm night with lows of 2 to 7 degrees. Now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Now you're welcome back. Dan McDonnell is with us. Hello, good evening.
Hi Joe, good evening.
Just reading a Daily Mail story. Fan asks Roy Keane for selfie during NFL game at
I haven't had the chance
stadium.
to watch this video. It was mentioned in someone actually mentioned it in Frankfurt yesterday. Just me dropping in. I was in Frankfurt at the draw yesterday, of course. But someone mentioned that Roy Keane. It's like they caught. It's like that, the amazing moment when. Sort of
seems TV
genre.
cut to him. Well, the image you can imagine is Keane pointing at the match and looking up in anger/disbelief, as in the match is on, and you're asking me for a selfie.
Yeah. Well, did you see this evening that some dude before the Man City press conference went up and looked for a selfie with Pep?
No.
He had accreditation or whatever. He's got into the press conference. And he's gone up with his mask on, and then he asked Pep for a selfie, and you can see Pep going, I'm in front of everyone. If I refuse, so he passively aggressively agreed to do it. But obviously, presumably that person by the other media was taken outside and.
Well, it seems television picked
this one up. But this is very keen as a member of the public getting involved. But I do feel sorry for Roy Keane. Where can he go for a bit of peace? You would think a corporate box at an American football game, I presume it's a corporate box of some description or some kind of hospitality.
Seats look comfortable.
Yeah, you think you might be around people who might understand that you deserve a little bit of space.
The next story I'm seeing is Iker Casillas has broken his social media silence less than 24 hours after he caused controversy with a tweet suggesting he was coming out as gay. He has tweeted a picture of himself in what looks like an elevator, and a suitcase is packed, and he says, time to travel far. So I dare say he's trying to get away from the criticism.
That story is just appalling,
isn't it?
It's just I don't even know what to say about it other than it's not the type of thing that let's have some sort of banter about it or something. You know what I mean? It's it's so probably incredibly hurtful to a lot of people. And then you look at it from the very cold, what does this mean for him perspective. I would have thought pretty damaging, the whole thing, and how this all played itself out. It's all very, very odd.
Yes.
Very, very strange.
If you missed this,
yeah.
Well, sorry, it's been my fault. I'm just flicking through random stories here on the internet. We'll talk about the draw.
Yeah, it's nice. I've never quite had let's just scroll through the Daily Mail app while doing a show discussion. But bit of variety, Joe. We've been doing this a while.
Indeed. Jonathan Wilson will join us later on. There has been some thought put into this hour, Dan. So
I know this.
Iker Casillas tweeted yesterday, kind of out of nowhere, I hope you respect me, I'm gay. And I think everybody thought, well, that's a kind of unusual and very simple, forthright way of making this disclosure after so many years in the public eye. It didn't occur to me it was a joke. Was it in response to something Carlos Puyol? No, Puyol responds to him, which I'll come to in a second. It seems to be, there are two lines of thought in this. If you believe Iker Casillas, he was hacked. Yeah. It seems to be that Iker at the moment is single these days and is the centre of much speculation in the Madrid press about who he's dating, and he's been linked with Shakira and linked with different high-profile women. So it seems like his personal life is front and centre of Madrid paparazzi life, and so this is some weird joke in response to all that, perhaps.
Very concentrated hacker, you would say.
Yes, indeed. Carlos Puyol responded.
Very unfortunate to be hacked by someone.
Yeah. Carlos Puyol responded by saying, it's time to tell our story, Iker. And then like, me too. I'm gay too, haha. And Puyol wasn't hacked. He's apologised. He said it was a clumsy joke. I messed up. I'm sorry for a bad joke, which had no bad intention. It was totally out of place. I understand I may have hurt someone's feelings. All my respect and support towards the LGBTQ plus community. So not hacked Puyol, Iker Casillas hacked. And now time to travel far is his latest dispatch. Why he needs to tell us, I don't know. But just really poor.
Yeah, I mean, I just like the whole hacking thing. I mean, everyone's just like, haha, yeah, people can that's his explanation, I suppose, for what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think you kind of wonder. We're talking about the reaction to it here. Probably in a country that would be, I don't know, hey, further down the line in some ways on this, and then not. I don't know. Like, it's sort of maybe the two of us aren't best placed to have that discussion. Like, I'm trying to think, what is is everyone in Spain up in arms over this? Is there widespread condemnation? Is that the case?
There is universal condemnation.
Just because it's from afar. It's not like it's not a World Cup hero in our country. Is there more understanding there, or more?
What's to understand?
Different? No.
There's no different sensibilities. He's been criticised by government agencies. Big story.
Okay.
It's a national, international outrage.
Then pretty damaging. Like, it's sort of, I don't know where he wants to go with his with his life from here.
Travel far in the short term.
Travelling far, obviously. Presumably that he wasn't hacked for that photo as well. That's. I mean, it's pretty damaging, as I said.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's. I mean, on the one hand, it's this minuscule 10 seconds of his life, and yet it will be associated with him forever. And I dare say you just always think, what was that about? Certainly if he clings to his I was hacked and doesn't explain further.
I mean, that's it. Or you're trying to talk about it, then you of course have to.
No, he was hacked.
That he was hacked, as opposed to, you can't reference the decisions.
Wasn't there an Aston Villa player? Mick will remember. Was it, or was it Joleon Lescott? Well, there was somebody who accidentally or tweeted in response to criticism, like a picture of a very expensive new car.
Joleon Lescott in his pocket. Yeah. I think the thing was that it went off in his pocket. I mean, I've pocket dialed on occasion. I'm sure you've pocket dialed on occasion.
I haven't screen grabbed a photo, tweeted.
I haven't managed to accurately pocket dial respond to abuse in a provocative manner.
Which incredibly unfortunate.
Like, if you could train your phone to do that, that'd be hugely helpful. You wouldn't have to deal with some responses yourself. Dan and Barry in the lead. This draw's a disaster. Well, thanks for that diversion. I mean, so I walked out of the draw hall yesterday, and I did sort of meet some of the FAI delegation there, and I mean, do you know the way, like, there's always a great, you can always find a contrarian. There's always a contrarian somewhere and I'm seeing a small bit of it come true now. It's like, these are going to be great occasions. These are going to be great games. That stands. And I respect that point of view. However, it's still an absolutely horrific draw. Like, I and I'm saying that from the context of maybe someone who's, say, covering football full time, who knows what Euro 2024 means to the FAI, what it means to Stephen Kenny, like, a lot of things of what happened in the last couple of years. There's always been but there'll always be Germany type thing going on in the background, and like, that's always been a sort of a degree of consolation for certain struggles. Like 2022 in many respects was a real ghost year in international football. Now, we can deal with this. The Nations League is actually really important, and I mean, I don't know how many times we need to learn that lesson in Ireland, that it's important, and yet they'll come round, they'll be like, these are just glorified friendlies, these aren't big games. It's like, and I think sometimes that's a spillover from we get so much of our football thoughts or coverage from the English football discourse and how they speak about international football in England. So I saw Gary Neville was on last week on Sky talking about these 4 games in 10 days at the end of the window are a joke. And sure enough, they probably were for England, who got terrible results probably as a consequence. But they don't really care if they go down from first to second seeds. France didn't care if they went down from first to second seeds because they're France. They'll be fine. They're England. They'll generally be fine. Ireland though, no, like Ireland, it's the Nations League is big. It's getting more important. And like we're learning this the hard way now, and it's because like these formats, these convoluted things. We're trying to explain how it all works. It's all about this, but I mean, we have suffered from the Nations League results. But in saying that, to go back to my original point, 2023 was a little bit of a ghost year, and in fact, in reality, 2021 was because Ireland lost the first 2 World Cup qualifiers so early. So you go back to the Luxembourg game, 27th of March 2021. By then, I actually remember probably being on here or writing the depressing thought that it's going to be almost sort of 2 years before Ireland play another really big qualifying fixture. And then you get to that draw and you're like, oh no. Like, Ireland may not play in this tournament. Ireland may not even get a playoff for this tournament. That's probably likely still, but not guaranteed. And then you're thinking World Cup 26, you're thinking 2028, and you're thinking that's 12 years from Robbie Brady. It's like, that's pretty grim. Like, that's some of the best years of people's lives, going to tournaments, people in their Ireland fans in their late teens, early 20s, like, this is a bad draw. I mean, yes, you will have the memories of Netherlands and France and whatever, but to me, it's about the major tournament summers. It's about those experiences, and they matter. And I know from the perspective of anyone in the FAI, they weren't talking about it being good games. They would have taken, if you'd said to them, there's a glitch in the system here and you have to play Faroes, Gibraltar, and the worst commercial teams in every option but the easiest, they'd have taken that. Okay. Because the TV money is centralised now, so I think the differences, the financial difference from these games is not as big as it used to be years ago when getting Germany, for example, or France was worth millions extra. Now it's not. It's all centralised. It doesn't matter. It's all about qualifying. And this draw, there is no positive slant to it from a football perspective for me. Yeah.
So effectively, they probably have no chance of getting past either of these two, and I hope we're.
Please clip this. Surprised. Please clip this in the future. Put in a line saying, if you're listening to this in the future, we're glad to be idiots, and I'm happy to. If Ireland finish ahead of either of Netherlands or France, I'll take the flak for that. And so
it's a grim prospect, but as of yesterday morning, I had always thought, well, I'll worry about the playoffs when the playoffs become our next kind of route through. Whereas I'm now, and before we've kicked the ball, I'm now thinking I need to really brush up.
Where's our permutations
playoff situation?
Where's our permutations going?
So will that be 12 teams and 3 qualify in effect in the playoffs?
I've been trying to think of an analogy that makes the playoffs thing palatable, right? And all I can think about is this. People have to think about the Nations League as like qualifying for a Grand Prix, right? Nations League is like qualifying for a Grand Prix. So everyone has their grid position, and they're in that grid position at the start of the race being the qualifying next year. Then the race happens, and clearly the higher you are up in the grid, you have a better chance of finishing higher up in the race. But things will happen, teams will crash, accidents will happen, but the top 20 teams are through automatically. And when those top 20 teams are gone, you go back to the grid and you'll say, in order, these are your playoff teams. And where Ireland are at the moment is sort of at that cut-off point where they're hoping that no more than 2 teams behind them in the grid finish in the top 2 in their group.
So in effect, we are looking for the big 2 in each group to sail through as much as possible. So let's assume that happens. Is the format of the playoffs then 12 teams, 3 of those 12 go through? There are like semi-finals and a final.
Correct, yeah.
I don't even know if our chances in that.
Well, you see, 4 of them are going to be in League C, which is Greece actually already have one.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be one of the higher ranked teams if we do
will either be in the B1 or the A1. And what Ireland really want is that top 2 scenario. You want all of the big guns in League A to qualify. Like, you want all of them to qualify.
Yeah.
And then you have this weird scenario where you end up going into potentially a weaker playoff than the League B one.
Okay.
So like Estonia, who are in League D, are getting bumped into the League A one, for example, because there used to be 4 places in the playoffs. Now there's only 3 because Germany are in automatically this time. So the consolation for the worst, the winners of the lowest Nations League pool, is they could put into the best one.
Okay.
But here's the thing, this is what I'm saying, like, England are in a group with Italy and Ukraine. Normally you'd be sitting, I say normally, I'm not going to cast aspersions on the nation's feelings, but I mean, Ukraine, you wouldn't be too unhappy if England or Italy finished third in that group. But that actually, for someone like Ireland, would be very bad, because then it means that England or Italy are definitely in one of those playoff routes. Like, it's not good. It's not good, this situation at all. I think a playoff is possible, but you need a lot of things to go right to have one that you would fancy. And then you look at some of the other groups yesterday and you're thinking, wouldn't have minded that.
Well, and look, our Nations League performances left us open and vulnerable to this slice of bad luck, so we have ourselves to blame, ultimately.
Yeah.
In a minute, if you can, because Jonathan Wilson is waiting.
Yeah.
What constitutes to pick the right word here, an acceptable, a career continuing group performance for Stephen Kenny?
The biggest game in them all is Greece away in June. Just the way things fall out. I mean, Ireland play France at home in March. There was a bit of speculation, like, if March went really badly, could be on the rocks then. I can't see what could happen at home to France that could reasonably lead to any discussion around that.
11-0.
But the June window, like, Ireland are away to Greece.
Yeah.
If Ireland have lost their opening game and then they go to Greece, like, then you're in bother. If Ireland can come out of that window, you go into France and Netherlands in September and you give it a go. Like, if you're still in the group in such a way, and that's been a problem. Like, Ireland have been out of these groups already. Let's be honest, it's not realistic that Ireland are going to finish in the top 2.
No.
But I think getting towards the end with the chance of that being viable, I think people would be reasonably understanding of it if a playoff suddenly happened to emerge. But clearly, if you start with 2 defeats, and that's why, like, the Greece game in June to me is the pivotal one of the campaign in terms of momentum and mood and everything. And that's why you've had Stephen Kenny on, and you hear him talking about the lead up to that, because of course Ireland had a summer camp this year where the first game in Armenia went really badly.
Yeah.
They can't have something like that happen again.
Okay. Dan, staying with us, back in a sec.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend, live on Sky.
This is News Talk.
Where will Stenoline take you this autumn? From unparalleled customer care to cozying up for some you time. From exciting onboard entertainment to settling in for some peace and quiet. All via service that is just right. Take your car to Britain from only €139 or France from only €189, car and driver one way. Get away from the everyday with Stenoline and start your trip right. Book today at stenoline.ie.
Greener choices are the key to a sustainable future. That's why Energia will give you cash back for any excess energy you produce from solar panels at home with our great value microgeneration tariff. Because the choices we all make today will change how we live tomorrow.
Criminals are using tricks to get your personal details.
Hello? Hello, we are calling to inform you that your bill is overdue. Please confirm your PPS number, name and address now.
Be alert, don't respond, and never give out sensitive information by call, text, or email. A message brought to you by the Government of Ireland.
Want to get away from it all this autumn? Then get on gobreaks.ie. Our holiday home deals start from only $4.99 for a 3 to 7 night stay. Or choose a relaxing hotel room from just €80 per night. And for families, kids stay free this midterm. With Go Breaks, you can save up to 25% with free breakfast included. So go explore this autumn with Go Breaks, as recommended by News Talk. Go Breaks. T's and C's at gobreaks.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live only on Sky Sports.
This is News Talk.
You're very welcome back. Joe Molloy here, Dan McDonnell alongside me. Very happy to say Jonathan Wilson is with us as well. Good evening.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, great. So we had Arsenal 3, Liverpool 2 yesterday. We will come on to Arsenal. I know the Arsenal fans feel they're being much ignored across much of this season. But for Liverpool, I think we can acknowledge that the title race is beyond them. And, well, I don't know, Jonathan, how you think Klopp finds his way out of this one. I suppose it depends on what your key diagnosis of the problem is.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. Yeah, well, it's not just one problem. It's a series of problems which are becoming interlinked. And every time I think you reach towards a solution in one area, it creates other issues elsewhere. So, I think we knew a couple of years ago that this was a team that was in danger of getting old together. I think Klopp or Liverpool as a whole, have signed players to try and alleviate that. But that has changed the dynamic. So you look at Mohamed Salah's form, and he's only scored 6 goals in open play since he came back from the Cup of Nations in February. And one of the reasons for that is he's not having as many shots as he was. He was having, I think last season up until I think January the 2nd against Chelsea was the last game he played before going to the Cup of Nations. He had 3.9 shots per game. This season so far, he's been having 2.9 shots per game. And I think, part of that may be physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, the disappointment of losing the Cup of Nations final, then losing that World Cup qualifying playoff, both for Senegal. But the other thing that happened in January was they signed Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz comes in, that means Sadio Mane moves to the middle, and that means that your centre forward isn't the player like Firmino or like Diogo Jota who drops off, creating space for Salah to move into. It's somebody who plays in a more typical number 9 position. Darwin Nunez is the same. He likes to play as the lead of the line in the middle. He's in the box. And so Salah hasn't got that space. That then has a knock-on effect for Trent Alexander-Arnold. And he ends up not able to overlap Salah because Salah's staying wide. So he starts coming inside. His crosses then become less effective because he's just crossing from a less dangerous position. And also it seems from that position for some reason to be harder for him to get back when balls are played in behind him. The Liverpool press generally isn't functioning as well as it has done. And that means that the defence is left more exposed. Alexander-Arnold was able to push forward in that very aggressive way because the press made it very hard for opponents to measure passes in behind him. Well, now the press isn't functioning. Opponents are measuring passes in behind him. Everybody now knows that's a vulnerability. Everybody's trying to target that. And I think we've seen his confidence has waned, leading to some very strange decision-making, as in the second Arsenal goal yesterday. So it's a whole series of problems. I don't really think you can say there's anything on within that team framework at the minute that's working well. And so to say, how do you fix it, I think is very, very difficult. I think Klopp's had enough success. He deserves the right to try to fix it. But I think we're probably already looking at next season rather than this. Maybe they can have a run in the FA Cup or the Champions League still, but the league is way, way beyond them.
And I mean, you take Salah even, and those issues further exacerbated by this slight subtle change of system to try and protect the back four a bit more and try and require less of Henderson and Thiago, for instance, from a running point of view. If you take the opening goal yesterday, where initially it looks reasonably okay, I don't know, were you at the game, so maybe it looked totally different in the stadium, but from a television point of view, it's Saka and Jesus, and they're reasonably lined up against Van Dijk and Matip and Alexander-Arnold, and then suddenly that left side is just flooded with runners from deep, and it's only on another replay where you see Martinelli amongst them who ultimately scores, and another like waving their hands frantically at Saka because they've got a run on Salah and he's somewhere around the centre circle, and this new system requires him to cover Alexander-Arnold more than he might have been used to when Jordan Henderson was in between the pair of them to back up Salah in a 4-3-3. And like Arsenal are just thinking, well, we can't believe our luck here, and goal duly happens. And that, I mean, 4-2-3-1, I kind of saying to someone yesterday, this is like Manchester United, where they desperately go from one change of system or player in a certain spot to another, and ultimately it doesn't mask the many fundamental problems. Getting Salah on the right hand side of a 4-2-3-1 is not going to help the situation much either. Again, this is why it's tricky for Klopp, when ultimately he just needed to buy more players over the summer and be more ruthless.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's 2 or 3 points there. So, I mean, Salah went off after 69 minutes, I think, and Klopp said afterwards, oh, it's because we're worried about his workload. He's put in such a defensive shift, or words to that effect. Well, that defensive shift involved 0 tackles and 0 interceptions. So, okay, it is a sort of truism that the best defenders don't actually kind of make tackles. But if you're the winger trying to track a fullback or trying to get involved on that flank, you'd think you'd be involved in some way that the stats register. So, as you say, Martinelli gets free. The other problem with that first goal, and is a problem with I would say probably Thiago, but certainly that Thiago Henderson axis. But suddenly Odegaard's in space, I don't know, 30 yards from goal. The 3 defenders lined up in front of him, with Martinelli making that angled run at pace. And that's the simplest pass in the world to slip through between Matip and Alexander-Arnold. That you've got somebody who's brilliant at playing that type of pass, but given the sort of pass that almost any player could pull off once they've got in that position. I think you saw with the second Arsenal goal. Jamie Carragher today was talking about how odd it was that Liverpool chose to put the ball in the box in the last minute of first half injury time from a free kick that was in a position where, as he pointed out, you can't score from a first header because it's so deep. The defensive line can be quite high, it can be 20, 25 yards out. So you're looking for a header down. So the best case scenario is there's a loose ball. So you're risking being counted upon. And yet they didn't really have the players in space to deal with that potential counter. When it comes, Arsenal have a 3-on-3. Liverpool's defence, those 3 who are left, which was Henderson to the right, Alexander-Arnold in the middle, and Tsimikas to the left, they look to be in a reasonably good position. But then the Arsenal runners coming through aren't being picked up. So Thiago just lets, I think it's Odegaard goes past him. And he makes no effort to pick him up. And so because of that, Alexander-Arnold, when he, I probably wrongly, but you can see why he's concerned by Henderson against the pace of Martinelli, why he sort of goes over to double up. Tsimikas has to come across to deal with Gabriel Jesus. And then there should have been other Liverpool players coming back to pick up Saka at the back post, to pick up Odegaard at the end of the edge of the box. But there isn't. The player who gets back is Darwin Nunez, who's had to run 80 yards. So something fundamentally has gone wrong with the structure of how they set up to counter a counter. But also, with Thiago, just a bit of effort. It shouldn't be that much to expect somebody to run back 30 or 40 yards to track a runner in the final minute of the first half.
No, and it's also an opposition to what Liverpool have been under Klopp for the vast majority of his tenure. As for Arsenal, they have youth, they have a settled shape, they have settled personnel, their summer signings are settling in beautifully, they have a manager who has won everybody over, I would think, and been very impressive in many, many ways. They are the real deal. How sustainable is this across the next 30-odd games with Man City pretty much destined to keep things very much on track?
I'd say you'd have to say Arsenal now are the favourites to come second. I'd still be staggered if... the World Cup is this big unknown. We don't know how that's going to affect the season. So I guess there's still that lurking there. That I don't know, maybe Haaland having a month off, maybe that will somehow affect his rhythm. But I find it very hard to see how City can be stopped. But I think you'd have to say Arsenal have so far been the best of the rest. I'm not 100% convinced by them. That I think, if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be worried about the way Tottenham equalised with essentially the first chance they got last week. As soon as Son got a run at Arsenal, they conceded. And I think there's something similar happened early in the second half, where Liverpool, having looked under loads of pressure, are suddenly able to create a chance of Firmino scores. So that would trouble me slightly. And I think that's I guess a milder form of what happened at Old Trafford, where Arsenal looked fairly comfortable and then end up getting picked off and lose 3-1. So that's not perfect yet. But I think what is really encouraging is both against Tottenham and against Liverpool, having had that setback of conceding, losing a lead when they've been pretty much in control of the game, they didn't buckle, as Arsenal teams of the past may have done. But they reset and they had the resilience to go on and still win the game. both games relatively comfortably. I mean, 3-2 doesn't sound comfortable, but in terms of the balance of play, they were much a better side.
Yeah, like, I mean, Jonathan, Joe sort of alluded to it there with his first part of his sort of Arsenal statement. Like, is it just a case that they're just maturing, that they've found that settled shape, or is there sort of a discernible difference to their approach this season that you can see that evolution?
No, I think you can see this is what they've been building to. I think Gabriel Jesus coming in, I think he fits that system a lot more naturally than Lacazette did or Aubameyang before him. That his pace when he gets to run at teams, his dribbling ability, but also his mobility, that he can drop off that front line and create space for Saka and Martinelli, who I think have become much more direct this season, partly because of that there is space for them to run into. So I think that forward line works much better. Odegaard is benefiting from that. I think he's maturing and he now looks a sensational creative midfielder. And then behind them, that partnership of Partey and Xhaka is working really well. And Saliba coming in, adding solidity to the back four. So you can see sort of all four areas of the pitch here: defence, back of midfield, front of midfield, forward line, have all slightly upgraded this season, partly because of personnel, partly because of just the way it's clicking. And once that starts to happen, you get that multiplicatory effect of confidence, which is what Liverpool have got in the opposite direction, that they've got the loss of confidence is exaggerating all the flaws. Well, Arsenal have got the snowballing confidence, which is magnifying everything they're doing right.
Jonathan, we're a year on from the Newcastle takeover, so it was about this time a year ago when very memorably Sky were on the pitch, and it was scene of celebration, and Jamie Redknapp, I think, was interviewing one of the owners or somebody certainly in the hierarchy. And here we are a year on, and they celebrated with a 5-1 win against Brentford, and everybody around St James's Park seems to be quite positive. What jumps out, and I heard Gary Neville maybe make this point, and it is very true, they seem to have skipped the very damning but also hilarious phase of buying the Robinho types and the Ronaldo. Really, Newcastle should have bought Ronaldo. They seem to have been a touch shrewder than that in the transfer market thus far, certainly, and not gone for the big names who are either mercenaries or past their sell-by date. What are we to say, moral quibbles aside for a moment, what are we to say of Newcastle's first year?
Yeah, I think from a footballing point of view, well, I don't know. If you asked me that 2 weeks ago, I might not have had quite the same answer, but comfortable wins over Fulham and Brentford have added a gloss. And I think we should bear in mind that, they're playing a Fulham team reduced to 10 men very, very early. Brentford basically gave them 4 goals. I mean, that's a bit unfair on Newcastle, but that was a result that had at least as much to do with Brentford's fallibility as Newcastle playing well. I think there had been a little bit of frustration growing with the number of draws they'd had, but then they had injuries to key attacking players. But yeah, the fundamental point is, I think from a football point of view, they've signed pretty sensibly. I think Kieran Trippier made a huge difference to them last year before he got the injury, and Guimaraes clearly is an extremely good player, either playing deep in midfield as he had been, or pushing further forward. And I mean, the Newcastle tendency seems to be to celebrate Eddie Howe, which I guess is an easy way of not talking about all the money they spent and where that money might have come from. But I think, he has done a good job in terms of tightening them up, which was the thing that his Brentford side couldn't do. They couldn't defend. And this Newcastle side, if anything, the problem has been scoring goals and turning domination into positive results. But the last couple of weeks have begun to turn that around. So I'm not entirely convinced. I think they could slip back into that slightly frustrating phase they had. But at the moment, you'd have to say that they've done things pretty well. Frustratingly, because it would have been nice to see them spend loads of silly money, because that's fun for everybody to watch a club make it feel as themselves.
Massive disappointment that they haven't done that. I was hoping for Sergio Ramos. I was hoping some big names down around St James's Way.
Yeah, someone like off YouTube or something who plays 7 minutes or something. But I'm kind of thinking though, Jonathan, like Eddie Howe, he's probably going to be in the England discussion after the World Cup or something. I mean, this is probably the next phase of the Eddie Howe story, where he can get started.
Jonathan just had an allergic reaction to that.
Just mention England's World Cup prospects, and he's totally he's imploded.
Yeah, I can feel the sand getting in my nose already.
But surely Eddie Howe is going to come in. Like I can feel that coming down the tracks if this Southgate thing does move, or am I completely misreading that, Jonathan?
No, I don't think you are, because the truth is that I think there's a general sense that Southgate probably is nearing the end. I mean, I don't think it would be a surprise to anybody. I guess the question to ask is, what would England have to do at the World Cup for Southgate still to be in the job in January? I think if he wins the World Cup, I'd hope he'd be sensible enough for his own sake to walk, because he's not going to get any better than that. If they go out before the quarterfinals, he'd probably be forced out by public pressure. So if England lose, having played pretty well, getting to the quarterfinal of a semi-final, then maybe that is what keeps him in the job for another 2 years. There's a sense that there is still progress and things are still going well under him. But I would say it's more likely than not that this will be his last tournament. And you then look at the short list of who can succeed him, and that is a very, very short list. And Eddie Howe is maybe the only name on it. I mean, it's very hard to, assuming it's going to be an English candidate, it's pretty hard to see anybody else really featuring. Just the nature of the Premier League is that there aren't many English managers about. Maybe, and I know this is not an Englishman, but maybe Brendan Rodgers. Maybe that's a way for him to get out of Leicester, which he's clearly desperate to do. And maybe just his background in the Premier League will be enough to make him palatable. But yeah, as an English candidate, I think Eddie Howe is pretty much the only one there. Unless I don't think there's anybody I've missed, is there?
No, I mean, it's a great way. I mean, Eddie Howe can leverage to get even more money out of the Saudis. This is incredible. He's got the lotto ticket there. Like, if you're in Newcastle, what club do you want to be at for someone to make an approach for you? It's got to be Newcastle, sure.
Oh, if you're in Newcastle, this is a really easy way of upgrading to Thomas Tuchel.
Oh yeah. Well, you see, that it could just be the perfect moment in time.
We would never stand in your way, Eddie.
Yeah. We understand this is your dream. No, don't worry about that compensation. Thomas, are you... okay, great.
Yeah.
Manchester United beat Everton at Goodison. Martial started the game, Ronaldo came on, Casemiro started as well. There were the initial moments where Ronaldo, great leader and pro that he now is, was disappointed that the ball was not crossed into him, and instead of getting back onside, threw his hands in the air in disgust. And then the goal that United scored was ruled offside because Ronaldo was too busy remonstrating. But then, to be fair to him, brilliant finish, his 700th club goal, which is just this ridiculous landmark. And it was quite striking on BT Sport, Rio Ferdinand, Joe Cole, Jolyon Lescott. The tone of the post-match coverage was very much, he's not the problem. This guy back in the team probably needs to happen. Very hard to keep him out now. To be fair, though, Joe Cole made the not unreasonable point, Jonathan. He said, it's not like, X number of games under Ten Hag, they're pressing like crazy without him. So, maybe like the argument's not as silly as it's been portrayed in places when it comes to Ronaldo.
I sort of think it's not just about the pressing, though. United have got to be weaned off Ronaldo. It's an unhealthy situation for him to be there. Because, for two reasons. So firstly, because he's just not the future to which Ten Hag is aiming. Now, you can say Casemiro isn't either, and that would also be true. But I think Casemiro, you can see that as a more reasonable patch to, as a way of building a bridge towards the Ten Hagian future. Ronaldo just isn't that. He's purely a short-term fix, and he's a short-term fix who's sort of the whole sort of circus that goes on around him that he necessarily brings. I think that does have a tendency to derail everything. That every conversation about United, whether Ronaldo plays, whether he doesn't play, it's always about him. So somehow, even when they lose 6-3 to City, the story is, why wasn't he brought on? Oh, he wasn't brought on because of respect for his career. And then there's this whole thing of, well, is it respectful to leave him on the bench to start? So the whole thing becomes about Ronaldo. I think it must be incredibly hard for a manager to try and assert himself in that circumstance. And actually, I think what Ten Hag's done has been very impressive. That he's asserted his authority in a number of ways. One of them by making the team do that punitive 13k run after the Brentford defeat. one of them by leaving Ronaldo on the bench and saying nobody's so big that I'm going to pick him come what may. I still think Martial is closer to what Ten Hag would like from centre forward. I think Rashford's played, he's shown signs of life after 18 months, 2 years of playing pretty badly. So I don't think Ronaldo is nailed on as a starter. And I'm also not sure that scoring a goal against a team managed by Frank Lampard is necessarily a sign that a man is back in form and all's well in the world. A lot of people have scored goals against teams managed by Frank Lampard. Admittedly, not this season, but in the fairly recent past.
Jonathan, great to have you on. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Jonathan Wilson with us. Back in 1 sec.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, watch all the football you love, including the biggest Premier League games every weekend. Live on Sky.
This is News Talk.
It's over.
Go, don't look back. Go get your life back on track. Though there's hurt, though there's pain, this car can't compete with the train. I drove you away, I wasted your time. You told me we'd come to the end of the line.
Break up with your car. Love 20% off fares with Ian Road Aaron.
Part of the Transport for Ireland network.
Fairco Windows and Doors, helping transform homes since 1998. Invest wisely, invest once. Visit fairco.ie.
You might think you know Ireland's ancient East, but maybe it's time for a closer look. Uncover stories bold and brave where vibrant city nights follow action-packed days. Set course for countless adventures at Carlingford Adventure Centre or roam wild in wonder in the Glen of Aherlow and become captivated by the culture and craft of Kilkenny's cobbled streets. Ireland's ancient East, yours to explore. Keep discovering at discoverireland.ie.
Taking the perfect selfie. Not as easy as it looks. You need the right angle, lighting, maybe a cheeky little filter. But then, that's it. Your GoDating.ie profile pic is good to go. And GoDating will take care of the rest. Two-way matching feature? Check. Add to favourites? Check. Member profile check? Check. GoDating.ie has you covered. Now, how are we getting on with the selfies? Oh yeah, nice. Use that one. GoDating.ie. As loved by News Talk.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live only on Sky Sports.
You're very welcome back.
Is News Talk.
Excuse me. You're very welcome back. Our football coverage is brought to you by Sky Out Believe Together as our women's national team face Scotland in the World Cup playoffs tomorrow. It is live here on the show with a full commentary, which we're looking forward to. Huge game. Obviously, Dan McDonnell is still here. Lads, don't be so negative. More than capable of getting a result across 4 games against the French and the Dutch, says Tony.
Yeah, I think that will happen. The problem is you need more than one.
What do we need? How many points do we need from those 4 games?
I think...
Don't say 4.
Well, it depends. But this is where the Greece games are key. If you can kick full points against Greece, which would be amazing, then you're in a slightly different situation.
I'm giving us 6 points against the Greeks.
Yeah, just like that. You know, they've won their leagues. Like they drew against Spain away last year. Gus Poyet, of course, the manager of Greece. We met Gus yesterday, and he was in good form.
Blast from the
past. All over the place. He was managing in Chile last year.
Yeah,
and he's ended up suddenly got the Greece job.
Global football now.
Yeah, like he's from Uruguay. Like it's some life really. Released John Egan when he was manager of Sunderland. Egan wasn't happy about how it was handled.
Grudge match.
So that's what it's all about.
Revenge.
Egan
John.
and Poyet. I think if you get full points against Greece, then you have a little bit more leg room. But you're probably gonna. I think you can. If you can maybe lose one of the 4 games, but you probably need to beat them. You need to get 2 wins or somehow go unbeaten and hope that it becomes one. As in, draw. Like what do Ireland do? But draw.
Yeah.
Like a load of draws and hope that Greece get involved and it becomes one of these groups where like loads of teams take points off each other in such a way that sort of a landmark win is really like 2 points. Like you want France and Netherlands drawing both of their games.
Yes.
And then creating some scenario where like a win can just like really like elevate you in such a way. But like France and Netherlands playing the first day of the group before when Ireland don't even play. So
it's such a lopsided schedule for Ireland as well that it's like
weird.
France twice before we played the Dutch once. It's this weird shape to
The
it.
fixture lists are done centrally now. I think Stephen kind of spoke to you about that earlier. Before, they used to go into a room and argue.
That's a much more dramatic and enjoyable way of doing it all.
Yeah.
Who won the negotiation?
Someone would come out and go, yes, we've got them at home, and you'd want to probably a big home game early, actually against something like France, because you're not out of the group, but then you get a trade off. And but now I do agree. I think if the nations were doing it, they wouldn't have situations where you'd play, like they'd probably have like 4-4, in the sense that you wouldn't have like your 2 games against Holland in the second half of the group. It'd be a sort of a Europa League or Conference League group now. There's generally a format to it. Like the team you play first is the team you play last, but it's a little bit more, I don't know. It's really weird how it's devised and sort of sketched out.
Do you ever watch Ted Lasso?
I've actually, I've downloaded it on my phone with the intention of watching it, but I've not got around to it.
It's grand. It's overrated, but it's grand. It's worth a look. But there's a scene in that where the grizzly old pro, Roy Kent, who I think you might have a guess who he might be based on as you watch it.
God, it's like the old Sensible Soccer or something back in the day. They don't have the rights for the full names or something. Yeah.
So one of the younger players is down injured and he's still trying to win over the crowd, and he's about to get back up, and Kent comes over to him and says, "Stay down, look like you're in pain. Now in 10 seconds get up and really like limp and grimace, and then limp back to your position." The kid's like, "Oh, okay," and does it, and the crowd responds. Like, it cuts to the fans going, "Oh, he's so brave," and all that kind of stuff. I was thinking of that when I watched Ronaldo walking in at full time from the Goodison pitch last night, because it was a slow motion walk, and he knew, the old pro, that in the BT studio, Rio, Joe Cole, Jolien were paying homage to him. This was prime time.
Oh yeah. Get
that camera in real tight here, chest back, and it is amazing that they were saying, "Oh, well, he's not the problem." But this proves he's not the problem. I'm not saying, he's a complete waste of time. Far from it. I can see some of the arguments putting him in, but I mean, as Jonathan Wilson said, he scored a goal against Everton. This doesn't change.
Have many ex-pros really gone in on Ronaldo in the sense of him being a problem?
No, I think there's such because they've been there. Yeah. We all know how great he was, obviously, to a point, but they really know how great he is.
That's the football hierarchy. There's a sense of within that world, like you see it at the weekend, even at the Euros draw, you'll have like Figo and the legends there. And there's almost a sense of, once you get the legend status, then we will not disrespect you.
Yes.
And that's sometimes like the pundits, ex-pro pundits who take off, or maybe lower profile players who have opinions, and aren't afraid a bit more to unleash them. But it's almost like the higher up the food chain you go, there's just a respect that you do not diss.
Well, I thought it was very apparent in that BT studio. Again, he had done nothing in that game which suddenly changes the fact he's 37, and there are various issues with what he can produce and why Ten Hag doesn't want him in the team. But it was like, this is what he does, and it's like all this silly. It's like his first 700 goal to be the one that wins the game. That says everything about him. He is just as likely to score 6 against a minnow,
But it's one of the things, I think about Robbie Keane's final years with Ireland. Robbie Keane, Ireland's greatest ever goal scorer, but it did get to a stage a little bit towards the end where Ireland were often playing 4-5-1, and he just couldn't beat a 1 in the 4-5-1 in certain games. And it was tough though. Yeah. And no one, no ex-player really wanted to say, we should drop Robbie Keane, because that's their ex-teammate and one of the outstanding players of their generation. I think it was actually difficult for some of the pundits in the arena then to talk about, and it was no reflection on him. It was just it's tough, and the demands on a striker now and the demands on the legs in those positions is difficult. And sort of, Ronaldo, that's the thing. You have a go at him. I said, well, what have you done in your career?
I think that's it. I think they all feel that acutely. Yeah. This guy's, hang on. This guy deserves our respect. Yeah. Which is, I sort of get that as well, It's a very human emotion. We're out of time. Daniel, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Of the Irish Independent. So look, you got some nice trips next year. I think that's what
I actually prefer the miserable Eastern European. I actually do.
Yeah, I know you do. You're genuine.
I don't like any of these trips. Apart maybe Greece, but the rest of them.
Too much glamour for you.
Just So I could say something there. I'm not going to say it. I just like the real hardcore away support who go to the far-flung places.
Oh, you don't like the types that go to Paris and.
Well, it won't be Paris, wherever it's going to be. But yeah, it's I'll see them when the tournament comes round. But I mean, let's go to Yerevan.
Tournament going types.
Yeah,
you don't like them.
There's going to be a lot of them who do we even care about the result? Like that's not the energy you want. That's the truth, though. They're all going to be out.
Our
People
football
about doubling them up with the Rugby World Cup trip. I was like,
I knew rugby was going to get a look in. Our football show coverage is brought to you by Sky. Outbelieve together as our women's national team face Scotland in the World Cup playoffs tomorrow. A game we have for you live tomorrow. Dan McDonnell, thank you very much. We are back tomorrow morning, 7:30 as usual. Tom Dunn is on the way next.
Give him a ball and he out of grass. He'll give you a move for the perfect pass. Give him a ball and he out of space.